All right, well, officially, good afternoon or good morning, not quite afternoon yet, to Unit 3 from Half Hollow Hills High School. My name's Emily Voss. I will be your timer and facilitator today. I am the Virginia We the People coordinator. In just a moment, I'll have the judges introduce themselves, and then they'll have you introduce yourselves and your coach. And from there, you all know the drill. They will read out the question to you for the benefit of the recording, and then you all will proceed then into your prepared statement, and we'll follow up with some Q&A. So your judges are really delightful people. They're a lot of fun, and they're looking forward to a great conversation. So with that, let me hand things over to your judges.
Hi, students. Congratulations for making to the national finals, especially after the challenging year that we've had. So you're probably very practiced in Zoom, and look forward to a conversation with you. I'm Donald Rogers. I did teach history at Central Connecticut State University, from which I retired recently. I judged We the People numerous times, the national level. It's a great program. It's a great thing that you're part of it. And again, I look forward to hearing what your responses are.
My name is Joe Stewart. I teach in the political science department at Clemson University in South Carolina. Judged at the Nationals for a number of years. Agree with my colleague, it's a great program. Relax. We're going to have fun today. You've learned a lot about the Constitution. We need to learn from you. So we're looking forward to that.
I agree with that. We've been learning all day long, the three of us have, from you. I'm Mike Miles. I'm from Birmingham, Alabama. I had tickets to Hamilton and the Music Man and a bunch of other plays, and then y'all switched the lights off up there when the pandemic hit. And so if y'all can just get things worked out and get things open back up, I'm in line now to get my tickets back, and I would love to come and greet you personally right before or right after the play. We can all go to dinner afterwards. So let's get to be friends today, and I'll come see you. Thanks.
And he'll buy dinner. So
yeah, the first time, but they have to buy the drinks if they're old enough.
yeah.
So please tell us who you are.
Hello, my name is Gianna Tantillo.
Hi, my name is Jessie Boxenhorn.
Good morning, my name is Wahab Ahmed.
Hi, my name is Kayla Renard. We are We the People Unit 3, and Mr. Pittman is our teacher.
Hey, David.
Great. Well, it's great to meet you all. And we're going to be doing question number 2 today. And I'll read it for you and for the recording. As with our question yesterday, it begins with a quotation from John Adams. There is nothing I dread so much as a division of the Republic into 2 great parties, each arranged under its leader and in opposition to each other. What issues led to the formation of the original political parties? To what extent have those issues persisted in American political parties? What are the advantages and disadvantages of a unified or divided government? Please go ahead.
Political parties serve to organize faction, to give it an artificial and extraordinary force, to put in the place of the delegated will of the nation, the will of a party, to make the public administration the mirror of the ill-concerted and incongruous projects of faction, rather than the organ of the consistent and wholesome plans digested by common councils and modified by mutual interests. Despite this concern stated in George Washington's farewell address, the evolution of political parties arose.
Dwight Eisenhower said, if a political party does not have its foundation in the determination to advance a cause that is right and that is moral, then it is not a political party. It is merely a conspiracy to seize power, highlighting the evolution of political parties. While parties in modern-day politics would often be categorized as a conspiracy to seize power, the formation of the original parties was truly to advance common interests and ensure domestic tranquility. As stated by historian Howard Feynman, we are an arguing country, born in and born to debate.
While Hamilton and the Federalists favored ideals like a strong central government, maintaining ties with Britain, and a central banking system, Jefferson and the Democratic Republicans focused more on being the party of the people, as they felt the Federalists were too elitist. However, the most significant issues include their conflicting interpretations of the Constitution and their favoring of either a strong central government or state government.
Jefferson and his followers favored states' rights and a strict interpretation of the Constitution. In contrast, Hamilton and his followers argued that a strong central government was essential to the unity of the new nation and favored a broad interpretation of the Constitution, citing the elastic clause found in Article 1. This key difference caused the initial division and was the foundation of our current two-party system.
One issue that has persevered from the original divide is that of constitutional interpretation. Current political factions, including the Democratic and Republican parties, often cite their different interpretations of the Constitution as the source of their disagreements. For example, in this statement by Republican historian A.E. Saman, the U.S. didn't achieve its liberty or prosperity by mistake. It was by design, and the architects were the founding fathers. Don't mess with the Constitution. Conversely, Democratic Justice Thurgood Marshall proclaimed, the true miracle was not the birth of the Constitution, but its life, nurtured through 2 turbulent centuries of our own making.
Due to the nature of political parties being ingrained in the American political system, disadvantages to the system arise. Political parties are often cited as a cause of the lack of progress or change within the government, specifically the Congress. The partisan nature and extreme polarization of political parties create an environment in which those with opposing views refuse to compromise and work together to find a better solution to problems. That being said, if one party within Congress is attempting to enact change that would be in the best interest of the people, the opposing party will often block this from coming into fruition simply because of this partisanship.
Contrary to the partisanship and schism that often impede progress, one significant benefit of political parties is their opportunity to promote and represent opposing views. They create checks and balances in a divided government and allocated resources in concentrated platforms for voters who historically were uneducated about civic involvement. Despite this and other benefits of the system, the damage that is done to the possible progress that could be made outweighs this. The extreme partisan nature hinders progress and creates a societal divide that in more recent years have become almost impossible to overcome.
The party system has changed immensely since the formation of political parties, demonstrating how partisanship has become greatly extreme and divisive in the status quo. As George Washington stated, there is much indeed to be regretted. Party disputes are now carried to such a length, and the truth is so enveloped in mis and false representation that it is extremely difficult to know through what channel to seek it. This difficulty to one who is of no party and whose sole wish is to pursue with undeviating steps a path which would lead this country to respectability, wealth, and happiness is exceeding to be lamented.
Thank you.
Wow.
Very good, perfectly timed, nice presentation. Going back to the John Adams quote and the George Washington quote and your presentation, John Adams says the division into 2 great parties is to be dreaded. Does that mean, and do you think he's right, that parties in general are to be dreaded or only under certain circumstances? I mean, is excessive partisanship the danger rather than partisanship per se?
I would say that he intended for that to mean excessive partisanship would be a danger rather than partisanship in general. As we did bring up in our statement, there are several benefits of having political parties within the system, being that people can get their different opinions heard and there could be healthy and purposeful debate over the best progression of our country and how it is best to move forward. However, when partisanship does become too extreme and it eventually impedes progress, that is when it does become dangerous. So I do believe that that is what was intended by that statement.
Going off of my colleague, I agree with her statement. And with partisanship in general, he definitely meant excessive partisanship because partisanship is such a natural thing. People are drawn naturally to others who believe similar beliefs to them. And that is something that would occur naturally in society and is basically not preventable at all. So excessive partisanship, which it turns into violence or too much control in the government, would be what he meant.
To add on to what my, sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, so to add on to what my colleague Jesse had stated, I believe political parties are inevitable in the sense that, according to political science branch, where we discussed divergence law, where a single ballot plurality within the first rule, which is the structure that we have in our voting system, tends to favor a 2-party system within the districts. And so I believe that if we extrapolate that to the electoral college, then it is inevitable that political parties in the form that we've seen them today will form.
I'm glad I let you go because it gives me a perfect transition. You suggested that that one of the advantages of political parties is promoting opposing views. You correctly say that Duverger's law suggests we're going to come up with 2 political parties in our system. Would it be better if we somehow had more political parties, and how could we get there?
Well, I believe that with a greater amount of political parties, like in a parliamentary system, that would create more division than we see today, because it creates even more arguments that we currently struggle with. And I believe that this would hinder even more progress. So I would believe it would not benefit compared to our 2-party system that we have today.
I actually disagree with my colleague in the sense that I think that if you have 2 political parties, some people don't necessarily fit in between those 2 parties. They have views that oppose that, or different views, such as the Green Party, for example, that aren't necessarily interpreted by the Democratic and Republican Party as they wish to be. So I think if we had more political parties, our government would be more diverse and everyone would have more likely of a say, in the sense that they have a group of people that they would belong with.
I like to argue with what my colleague Jesse said and state that if we had more political parties, then the person that would represent that party that would win would not represent the majority of Americans as we see today.
Well, let me advise you, it's never good to get in an argument with 3 women. You'll probably lose that pretty quickly, I would think, before too long. I don't know of any state in the country that had to face the pandemic more quickly than New York did. And the spike in cases was way ahead of my state, at least. And Joe, I think ahead of South Carolina. You had a president of the United States who had a fair amount of influence if he wanted to use it to fight the pandemic. You had a Democratic governor who was press conferencing every day. You had a mayor of your largest city, not only in your state, but almost anywhere, who was interested in running in the Democratic primary for governor when the time came. Is that an example of partisan politics just abjectly failing? And I'm not trying to preclude a question Dr. Rogers is going to ask you. When something like that happens, if you're a Republican, I'm just going to do it this way, and you think your governor or your mayor is doing a better job of fighting the pandemic, or if you're a Democrat and you think the governor's not doing enough and the president maybe can do more, do you hang political philosophy on the wall and vote for how do I save the life of my family member? Are there things that supersede political philosophy like the pandemic might could?
That's a very difficult question, in the sense that that's very conflicting for me. I would definitely put my family first and my views second. However, my views and my family align similarly, in the sense that I think that with that, my morals would follow what I would do in this situation. If that makes sense.
Just to answer the question from a different point of view, I would say if we're discussing what the majority of Americans would do, most Americans do not have such a strong affiliation with their party that they would rather choose to still vote for someone within the party that they affiliate themselves with, rather than save the life of a family member or do what they believe is best for themselves in the upcoming next few years and to get through such a difficult time such as the pandemic. However, there are extreme situations in which people view their party as their family or something to the nature of their party is their entire life. And that's when we do see this extreme polarization that can become dangerous, because if you're willing to choose your affiliation to your party and the supporting of your party just in terms of politics, rather than saving the life of a family member or improving the status of your living quality and your health for the next few years, that's when we see this extremely dangerous polarization.
I couldn't agree more, Gianna. I'm afraid in my darker moments, I'm one of those people. I think my political party is part of my family, and I have to really struggle against that. Dr. Rogers, ask your question if you've got time.
I mean, have there been cases in our national history when our political party system has failed? And what are they?
I could go into the history and everything, but I think the most prevalent example right now is what's going on right now. And this kind of feeds into the last question. But with the COVID response and everything, we are so hindered by the major divide between our two major political parties right now that we didn't take action for a long time, and it's made it worse.
Going off of my colleague, I would say a huge there was much chaos with the attack on the Capitol, and that really shows the extent to which people are drawn to their political parties, that they would vandalize and break into the Capitol just because they declare a election unconstitutional and void. Oh, I'm done.
Very good,
Emily
very
put
good.
that
You wanna
sign up
keep-
and let us finish.
And I
finish
think
up?
that's a really clear example on how people are so drawn to their political parties that they would go to such a big extent to break the law. And that shows a lot.
Well, thank you very much for a nice and thoughtful presentation. You covered all the parts of the question well, in my judgment. You had some good examples, both of the sort of the values of unified government, the value of divided government. I thought you answered the question well, particularly on my question, is excessive partisanship or partisanship per se? And I think you made a point, well, partisanship has advantages when it works, but not when the party attitudes have become too polarized. I wish we had a time to go back to the Ike quotation of President Eisenhower quotation. I understand the quotation to say that a good political party is one that adheres to principles, to ideas. And I might have asked, well, is that really the way our parties are organized? And there may be coalitions of people who think different things, and that may be one of the problems. So that's an issue that I wish we had had more time to develop. I thought your two answers on what the government failed. I mean, the January 6th is you're right. I mean, why are those people storming the Capitol? Because they think the parties, haven't performed properly, whether we agree with them or not. Of course, there are other examples of civil war. The election of 1860, which led to the Civil War, stands out as a possible example. But we only had 8 minutes to Q&A with you. And so a lot of really good issues, and it's a sign of a good presentation that you raised so many issues that we didn't get a chance to get to. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I agree with my colleague. I thank you for the quote from Eisenhower. When I teach political parties, I contrast Edmund Burke's idea of political parties, which is what Eisenhower was hearkening back to, with Anthony Downs, who's a more contemporary political scientist. And Eisenhower, I think, and not surprisingly, says it better than the average political scientist. Wish we'd had more time to explore this idea of the original difference between the elitist and the people, the Madisonians and the Jeffersonians, because I'm not quite sure we would need to explore what did the Jeffersonians mean by the people. I like your mention of not messing with the founding fathers. It's a variation on the old Texas bumper sticker. It was anti-litter, don't mess with Texas. I'm not sure the founding fathers would agree with that. I believe they felt like they could be messed with a lot if it worked. These were practical politicians trying to get things done. They might have fit into the bad version of Eisenhower's definition of political party, but that's an extreme position. I thought you did a good job of dealing with the question of why we don't have more parties, and you're exactly right on Duverger's law. And you dealt with an important cultural divide here when my colleague from Alabama asked his question. He used the phrase "might could." Might could is a Southern expression, Judge Miles. I'm not sure these students will have heard might could, but they answered your question even though without the translation. So I'll turn it over to you now.
Yeah, I got to go back and think about what I think that phrase means. The reason that Dr. Stewart was so pleased about your quoting Dwight Eisenhower is that Dwight Eisenhower was a student of Joe's in freshman political science, Kansas University at some point, I guess, along the way. So you've always appreciated your student growing up and doing so well. Um, three things. I think the quotes that you used were so well selected. That they're quotes, many of which we have not heard today, and I love the quotes. I agree with Dan and Joe about how great those were. Um, we've kind of dipped into the question a little bit as the day has gone along about times the parties have failed. And Dr. Rogers, I'm struck by the fact that we've had three very powerful, very different examples. January 6th was certainly an example. You're 100% right about that. And the interesting thing about that one is a lot of those people thought that both parties had failed because they were mad at Republican state officials who had certified the election results. So they were mad at the Democrats and Republicans. They were mad at everybody. And still that doesn't justify what they did. One of the examples was a government shutdown when the parties couldn't compromise on the budget and shut the government down. I think the COVID virus is an example of political party and governmental failure. There's just no justification for not saying we got to fix this and save people's lives. It's interesting what we've been asking questions today about multiple political parties, minority parties. Your state is the best example I can think of offhand. Was it, oh goodness, Joe, who was it that ran? Was it John Lindsay that
Yeah.
ran for mayor of New York as the nominee of three different parties nominated him for re-election as mayor? And by George, he won in spite of that fact. He managed to win. I think there was somebody else that did too. Um, and so y'all have to deal with this minority party business up there where an almost faction can peel off enough votes from the party that they really more identify with than the other and help the party they least identify with win. I guess the other thing I'd say to you is that because of David Pittman's influence in your life and your ability to do what you did, keep developing your thoughts on this and get to the point where you're the one that issues these quotes one day, where people can quote you, that you're in a position of success where people can quote Kayla Renard or Gianna or Jesse or Wahub and say, I heard them say so and so, or in their book they wrote so and so, and people be influenced by your thoughts because of how incredibly developed they are to this point. You are a tribute to David Pittman, and he is a tribute to you. That the five of you could come together in this way this time with us today, and we will remember you.